Welcome to the Free Flowing Health Podcast, where we invite you to embark on a transformative journey towards a healthier, happier, more fulfilling life. Each episode brings you a dynamic exploration of the diverse aspects of health, wellness, and healing. I'm your host, Lisa Brown. Join me as I engage in intimate conversations with inspirational guests who share their unique stories and insights. These conversations will take you beyond conventional thinking, encouraging you to break free from the constraints of a one-size-fits-all healing approach. Our mission is to empower you with the knowledge, tools, and motivation needed to inspire real change. Are you ready? Let's dive in. What's up? Take two for today's episode. That's real life, though. I'm super excited to interview Robbin from St. Pete, Southwest Florida, originally from Virginia. She's a serial entrepreneur, a strong, courageous, business-minded woman who has a lot of projects in the works. She is owner of the retreat center Solstice in Punta Gorda, and a yoga teacher for many years. In addition, she has a new project launching that she will be talking about later. The topic for today will be, we're going to start out by talking about the taboo topic of trauma. So just as a warning, if you find that to be a trigger, you can either scroll ahead or just turn off and join us for the next episode. Often trauma, a lot of people are afraid to talk about it, and we want to create a safe space for people to vocalize in an empowering way what they have been through and validate their experiences to hopefully inspire other people to gain control of their lives and begin to heal and transform. Much like Robbin, I know that I was raised in a dysfunctional home with abandonment, neglect, abuse, addiction, divorce, mental illness, and the whole gamut of dysfunctional behaviors that you can possibly imagine. So the hopes are to not only paint the picture of what Robbin went through, but to show how she found the light and how she now, through her work, serves as a beacon of light to help uplift others. And I want everybody out there who's listening to know that there is hope. You are not alone, and that we've all been through some shit, and it's okay to talk about it, to process it. Of course, if you need to seek professional help, please do. But in the meantime, welcome to the show, Robbin. I'm excited to have this discussion.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. As Lisa said, this is take two. So we had a little technical difficulty earlier. So thank you for your patience.
And that's real fucking life. Also, Robbin is a podcast host of You're So Fucking Enlightened, a spiritual, a not so serious approach to things spiritual. I probably butchered that, but it's awesome. So you can talk about that at some point. Everybody needs to subscribe.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. And I love what you're doing. And thank you for bringing light to trauma. It's a big word that we're using in the spiritual world right now, but I love it because it's something that we attach shame to, I think, sometimes. And we don't want to talk about, addiction and abuse and just any traumatic experiences that we have. Society has attached shame to those things, like it's our fault, or like that. I don't know. I don't really understand the science behind it, but I know that it happens, and I appreciate you allowing anyone that you bring on to give voice to it, because there's so much power in that. So yeah.
And before we get into the nitty gritty and the details of your life story, I do want to say I think we're both of the belief that the perpetrators were hurt themselves and that hurt people and continue this cycle often unconsciously. So it's not that we're placing blame or, I think it's important to do the work and to find forgiveness to free yourself, of course, but not to make our family members out to sound like complete monsters. Of course, they were dealing with unresolved issues and probably didn't have access to the help or the information that maybe you and I and our peers had access to. So I want to throw that out there as well.
Absolutely. And I think that, just saying that is, I firmly believe that everyone is doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have at all times. And yeah, I should say that too, because I'm sure I'll post this whenever it comes out, and my parents are going to hear it. And but we've had conversations that about their past, that they know now, that like, even though I was angry and I did blame them for many years, like I was able to work through that. And now like I'm able to see that they were doing the best that they could, and that I'm no longer, I don't really see myself as a victim. It was something that happened, and I am responsible for dealing with it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, can you
Yeah,
just take us back to your childhood and I guess just paint a picture of what it was like, what dysfunctions you dealt with, and then how in your young adulthood that impacted you psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. So just paint a picture of what it is you went through and what that was like.
sure. So, um, I will preface this with I will tell you what I remember. I am someone that I do have a selective memory. I blocked a lot of things out, which, as we know, is a trauma response. It's completely normal. It happens to a lot of people. The science behind it is it's basically our brain protecting us, right? And so it's just something that happens sometimes when something that is really harmful to us and traumatic. There are certain people that do block things out, and so I'll share with you what I do remember. So, um, so looking back into my childhood, it actually started off very lovely. Like I have a lot of really good memories in the early parts of my childhood. From the first memories that I have, probably around 3 or 4 years old, that I were all good and positive. I had loving, my parents were loving, I was safe, I felt secure, I felt happy. And I don't, I don't know where it happened. I can't ever put a finger on it. I haven't really asked my parents about it, but at some point there was a turning point where my father became more physically abusive to my mother, and my mother turned to alcohol. And my father came from an abusive household, and my mother came from a household where there was alcoholism. And so they just continued that cycle and that pattern into their family. And I guess my first memories of my father being abusive were toward my mother. He was, I just started noticing that there was a lot of yelling first, a lot of just rage, like rageful yelling. And then it turned more violent, where he would push her. And I remember one time he pushed her into like the fireplace, and she had all these marks all over her. And that was very scary as a child. And my mother, I think she kind of coped with that through alcohol. And I don't know, what can you say about that? Like it's really hard when you go from having what you perceived as a healthy, loving family to abuse and addiction. I mean, that's hard. Even if you were born into it, it's hard. Whoops. And then if you were, experienced a normal situation, or there's the myth of normal, what you perceived as normal into something that became very dysfunctional. That was also very hard. So, at some point the main turning point, which I will say, is that when my mother took my two younger sisters, one was a baby and one was around, maybe, I can't remember, I'm going to say between 5 and 7, took them into the car when she was drunk. She was getting ready to take them over to my grandmother's house, and she went out. Damn, I have to we got to the point, and now I have to go through it again. This is the situation that, like, I recently started. This is a situation where, just to be real candid, I I had a triggering situation where my uncle was dying and my mother was taking care of him, and I was helping her. Like I had a senior home care company, and so we had caregivers go over and take care of my uncle. My mother was drinking during this whole time, and this was probably, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. And this event kept coming back up for me during this time because she was drinking, and it was triggering this event. And I have been doing a lot of work about this event, so I'm going to talk about it again, but just know that it is hard for me to talk about. My mother was getting ready to take my younger sisters to my grandmother's house. She lived about 10 minutes away. I was staying home, and she took them out to the car, got them in the car seat, strapped in, whatever. She came back inside. I saw her pour vodka and Kool-Aid into a cup. So this was the early 90s where like everybody was still drinking Kool-Aid. And so she came back in, poured this, and then at that point I saw her like wobbling out the house, and I realized that she was drunk, and she was getting ready to drive my sisters to my grandmother's house. By the time this like registered in my head, she was back in the car and pulling out. And she was so I run outside, and I'm waving her down, and I'm screaming. I mean, who knows? Like, I don't know what neighbors saw, but nobody came out if they did. But I'm screaming, running down the road. I run back in the house, grab the cordless phone, and call my grandmother. And, I'm probably then give her almost a heart attack. I'm screaming to her, trying to explain what's going on. I'm just like hyperventilating and thinking everybody's going to die,
And how old are you at this point?
I think I was between 11 and 12, I think. Yeah. And so I get in touch with my grandma, tell her what's happening. Finally, I'm able to tell her, get it out. And she is also a nervous wreck. Is the longest 10 minutes. And my mother finally arrives. Thankfully, the story does not end in tragedy. She, I think she ended up hitting a mailbox on the way there or something. But my sisters were safe. My mother was safe. She did not harm anyone else on the way there, thankfully. But my grandmother went out and took the car keys from her. And this was where, like, my family, like, this is the turning point of, like, my family falling apart, because my mother ended up going to rehab at this point. And it just was like, I'm sure this would have eventually happened anyway, because their marriage was not very strong at this point, but she met another man there, and I think she had an affair with him. I don't know fully, but I know she eventually left my father and moved in with this other man. And so then, so she left, she moved. My father, we grew up in a very, for the time, traditional household where my mother was the house, she was the homemaker, and my father was, he worked all the time. He worked graveyard shift. He was just not around. He was like the fun Saturday morning eating pancakes dad, not like, he was not doing any parenting. Yeah. So, but now all of a sudden he had to do all the parenting, because my mother was off living another life with a man that we never met before. And it was just all really cringy and icky and gross. It felt awful. It felt really awkward. And my father at this point also became a little more abusive toward me. And I think my sister, actually the middle sister, I think she actually sort of bore the brunt of it worse. But, although it's funny how we assign levels to abuse, although my father never punched us or anything like that, but he definitely hit us. He used a belt. He would almost like sometimes choke us or like grab us really, really hard. He would leave like fingerprints on us. And a little side note, my father and I are very close right now, and he also doesn't remember a lot of this because he recently said to me, I don't think it was that bad for you guys. I don't think I was too hard on y'all. And I realized then that he also, I think, blocked a lot of it out. And I just was like, there were some moments, Dad, but you eventually got a lot better. And so like, I wasn't even, I'm not angry about it anymore. I don't feel like I need to bring that. I don't really need to revisit that with him. We have both healed a lot and we're in a good place. So I feel good about saying that to him, but that is what happened. But also I think as a result of my father ended up developing what we now know is schizoaffective disorder, which is like, I guess it's a branch off of schizophrenia. Like he doesn't necessarily hear voices or anything like that, but he gets to where he's really, really paranoid. He can't carry on conversations. He can't work. It's just, he is on disability now because of it. And as long as his medications are maintained, he's okay. And he can function in society, can drive and all that. But I think that as a result of like, he had a lot of trauma in his childhood, the traumatic experience of my mom, and now having to raise 3 daughters, he had no idea what he was doing. I think that really triggered that illness, or however you want to say, it manifests. That's how it manifested for him. That's how he was able to cope with it. I think it was sort of a way of also checking out, right? And so, now we've got, 3 girls that have dealt with like addiction, divorce, abuse, alcoholism, and now mental illness. So I don't know if you follow Gabor Mate, but there's like the big T's and the little T trauma type thing. And I love the way he talks about it. He's like, those are like, there's only like one other thing, I think. Oh, sexual abuse, which, that's one thing that I can't add to that. So, but everything else we have. And so how did that manifest in our lives? So, it manifested by anger for me. And I was angry. I didn't want to help with my sisters. I didn't want any part of my family. I eventually found, at 15 years old, I found a boyfriend that I basically was with because of his mother. Like his mother was very nurturing to me. She was very maternal. She was everything that I needed right then. And I moved in with them when I was 15 years old, excuse me. So that served a purpose for me at that time in my life. And I'm very grateful for that, because I think that probably kept me basically from like being homeless. And, but I did eventually, like, I was also like skipping school all the time and not doing well, and just, it was just awful. There was a lot of, just doing, I was drinking, and I was definitely like smoking pot then. I wouldn't say that I ever really turned into like some sort of alcohol. It was just basically a way of me being able to release my anger. And so eventually, around the age of 18, I started working in the bars. And around 21, I became a bartender. And
fucking me too. Wait, me too.
Really? Isn't that funny?
We'll get almost everything that you're saying. Sorry to interrupt. Just all of the reflections and that visceral feeling in my gut, and just this deep empathy and understanding as you speak. So please continue with your story.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people though that were working at the bars came from similar backgrounds, right? Though, like,
yep.
We all have, well, first of all, everybody has trauma and has dealt with trauma in their lives, but a lot of times people that worked in bars had capital T trauma happen, like we all had something, and it was just a way. I don't know what it is about the restaurant industry, but we all like have that in common, and we're all pretty fucking angry about it. Yep. But anyway, I met my son's father in one of those bars, and we had a brief moment in time, and I eventually ended up pregnant. And for me, that was my turning point, because I was really bound and determined to not raise my children in the same way that I was raised. I don't think I fully succeeded at that, but I definitely, like, this is what makes me realize, like, we're all doing the best we can at any moment in time. Like, but so for me, that was a turning point to where I just wanted to become a little bit more aware of things. And I started practicing. I did a video one day. It was do you remember Rodney Yee?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not everybody does, but if you're of a certain age and you're in the yoga world, you know who Rodney Yee is. It was just like yoga for strength or something. And so I started doing that. And that was just a way for me to, I'd heard good things about it. I've heard that it was good for mindfulness, but also for like exercise. Right. So that's how I started. I started with a video, and I actually found a Rodney Yee video when we were moving when I was like going through our stuff for our move this past few weeks ago, and I was like, is this the original video? Is this like the turning point video? I don't think it was. I think it was another one, but I was like, I'm keeping this because it was a huge turning point for me. That's where it started. And I started practicing at home in my living room, and I liked the way I felt after I did it. That's all I knew. I didn't know a lot about mindfulness or meditation or just anything that had to do with paying fucking attention. And but I knew that I was starting to pay a little bit more attention, right? It starts just it was just like my yoga journey has been a baby step journey. That was 21 years ago. And so that was a turning point for me. I just kept on going through the gym yoga. I discovered a really great yoga teacher who I ended up being able to thankfully take my yoga teacher training with a few years, well, actually many years after I discovered yoga. But it was initially for a little bit of more spirituality, a little bit more mindfulness, but mostly I was still very much in my ego in my early 20s. And I was like, I just want a great body, so, and so that's why I started practicing yoga. I was very much into like power yoga, vinyasa flow yoga, which I still love, but I'm in a different age now, so it's a little different. But it was just one day my yoga teacher said, yoga is not about getting a tight ass, it's about getting your head out of it. And that was one of those other things for me where it was like, yeah, I guess it kind of is. And then it was, I started really like paying attention, learning a little bit more about how I've never like processed certain things in my life. It's been a long road of healing for me. But I think yoga was really the catalyst for that. And I really blame, I don't know, that's not the credit, yoga for being, for being the catalyst that changed my life completely, because I went back to school. I got my degree, eventually got my degree in elementary education, went back again, got my master's in instructional design. Then I left I was a teacher for a little while. I left the teaching industry because I didn't like education. I like education, but I do not like our education system in the US. So it had nothing to do with the kids. I love them, but so I said, I want to be an entrepreneur. I've always had an entrepreneur spirit. I always thought it was like, for me, it's been ridiculous that we work 40, 50 hours a week to pay for a house that we're never in.
Yep.
And I like my house, so I want to be in it always. So I was like, I want to do my own thing. And so we took out a home equity loan, and I purchased a franchise, a senior home care franchise. I ran that for about 3 years, really felt in my heart and knew that it was time to move on. And so I sold it and I reinvested that profit into the retreat property at Solstice now. And that's been going on now for a couple of years. And I'm getting ready to branch off into something else, but I just credit yoga as being like the catalyst that really, was a turning point toward my healing journey. And it's been a long fucking road and I'm still on it. So I feel like it's like we are continuously like, I mean, I'll say this too, like we should not be working on our healing 24/7. We should be living life and having fun, but we should be mindful of how our reality is being shaped by the decisions that we make that are usually based on a lot of times they're based on someone else's idea or society's idea of what we should do. And I guess it's just all, for me, it's just like all about paying attention and to our decisions and to how we feel. So anyway, I think that's the gist of it.
Well, thank you. It was very insightful. I know that's just even a small portion of your journey. I know you recreated certain patterns and there was an
Yeah.
abusive relationship and you had a couple DUIs and we
Oh
don't need to
yeah.
go into
Yes.
all of
Yeah.
that.
No, we can't. I forgot. See, look at me skipping over things. Yes, there was like I did continue that pattern into when I was about 16. I like went to the first boyfriend that I had was lovely. Like he was a nice guy. He was not ultimately for me, but I think it was a lot more about like his mom, looking back on it now. And then I ended up actually in an abusive relationship from the time I was 16 to 20. And it was just repeating that pattern. And I can't believe I just skipped over that whole thing. See how we just like our memories work? Yes, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. I was in a very tumultuous, abusive relationship from the ages 16 to 20 and just continued that pattern. And eventually, it was after that relationship ended that I met my son's father. He was not abusive, and I have continuously made better choices. And I'm now married to a man who would never even like think about that, Sometimes he's too gentle. But yeah, and I did drink a lot. I know that in the world of addiction, I've done a lot of work around addiction. I've done a lot of work around alcohol. I believe that I can confidently say that except for a short period of when I was 21, I don't think I ever was addicted to alcohol. I've never been addicted to drugs. I tried so hard to smoke cigarettes. I just was never able to like get addicted to it. And I think that I don't know if they say addiction is genetic. There's a genetic aspect to it. I don't fully know if that is true. I think it's more that it's trauma that is genetic, and then there's coping mechanisms that we use to deal with it. But I think there was a time where I may have been a little bit of an alcoholic. But I will say that I was able to, through my years, like I still drink sometimes, but like I can confidently say that I'm not an alcoholic. And it's such a sensitive subject to some people. Because they'd be like, well, if you feel like you need alcohol, blah, 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 blah. I never feel like I need alcohol. Sometimes I just want to drink wine while I'm cooking, that's most of the time what it is. But anyway, I just felt like I wanted to bring that up because sometimes people, like, I know some people have gone through this also deal with addiction. And I think that not everyone does. And so I want to just make it not clear, but like, make it like, don't assume that you're going to become addicted to something if you have addictive parents or you've dealt with addiction in your life. I think it's important to be very mindful of it and be very careful of it, but don't assume that it always happens to everyone, because for some reason it just skipped over me. And I can't say the same thing for other people in my family, but it did. So anyway, but I did in my 20s get 2 DUIs when I was working at the bar, because we would drink after our shifts. And one time I got pulled over because my taillight was out, and I guess I did have too much to drink, as according to the law. And then it happened again. So very, very similar situation. And I had to deal with all of the repercussions from that, all of the financial windfall from that, all of the, this was in the early 2000s, where I didn't end up having to have like the breathalyzer thing on my car. But yeah, so I guess this would have been the point where I was definitely drinking too much. So, but yeah, that happened. And from there, though, I'll just say that, like, I had, I met my current husband when my son was very young. And I will also want to credit him, because I went through, we were thinking about foster care training. We were thinking about becoming foster parents for a while. We went through foster care training. We never did, because my daughter was uncomfortable with it, and they won't let you do it if one of your birth children are not comfortable with it. But I learned in foster care training that we don't know how to have healthy relationships until they are modeled to us. And I realized, like, that was a moment where I realized that I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship for many years in my life, until I met my husband. And even then I resisted it because of all of the trauma that I had been through. I sort of created a lot of drama in our marriage in the first, we've been married for, it'll be 16 years this year. But in the first few years, I created some drama in our marriage, and would just start fights because I didn't understand that the cycle of, like, the drama, the fighting, and the making up, like, to me, that was what love was. And I didn't realize that that is not what love is. Right? That's what some of us perceive love to be that have been through that. And I think you get a little bit addicted to, like, the breakup, makeup, that whole thing. So I know that I think I was, for sure. But it's just been a series of little moments and little aha moments over the past 21 years that have led me to where I am today, which is in a state of, like, from now, I feel like I'm more aware than I've ever been, but I'm sure there's still lingering things going on, I'm sure. So
All I have to say is, wow, thank you for taking us through that evolutionary journey and just painting that
yeah,
picture. I can only imagine, as a young girl, because I experienced it, similar experiences,
yeah,
that, it took a toll maybe on your self-worth, or, created
yep,
feelings of guilt, shame, not being enough, and trying to navigate all different things at that age, from the the mental issues to the addiction, probably some sort form of neglect as well. And, now having an understanding at that age, it's obvious that, as you move into adulthood or young adulthood, that we often create these patterns in what's familiar for us. But it's just amazing to see that when the door opened, the yoga door, that you walk through it, and, can look back and maybe see these experiences as opportunities for growth, as you, grew into the woman who you are today. And, obviously healing is in the works always. It is a process. It doesn't have to be 24 hours a day, but we are on a journey. It is considered practice in my eyes. And, that level of awareness and light that you bring to the situations, it's inspiring to hear that you've healed the relationship with your father, and I'm assuming your mother as well.
well, that one's still a work in progress, because
Okay,
that
so
thing
still a
happened,
work in
that thing only
progress.
happened 5 years ago, and that sent me backward. So it set me back, and I had to take a step back from my mom. I love her, but it's like that relationship, I had to set a healthy boundary with, because to me, the best apology is changed behavior, right? And to me, the fact that she has still not really been able to change that behavior, um, I know that it's not a direct reflection on how she feels about me. So I'm not angry about that anymore, but I know how it affects me, and I know how it triggers me. And so I have to be very careful about the times of day that I talk to her, and just the exposure that I have, because she's still very much in victim mentality. She's angry at me because I'm still having such a hard time with this. I think that I wouldn't have such a hard time with this if she did change her behavior, and if she, ultimately quit drinking or quit all of this, or I don't know. I think it would help me move through it. But I know, at least now I know that it is not a reflection of her love for me, which I think for a long time that I thought that it was, So, it's a reflection of shit that she doesn't have any other healthy coping mechanisms for. And that is what I think most of addiction is about. It's a coping mechanism for shit that they haven't dealt with. So,
And as a self-sufficient adult who obviously has autonomy and free will, it's important to set those boundaries in
yes.
your process of healing and move
Yeah.
at a pace that's comfortable to you.
Yes. Yeah. So that one's still a work in progress, but we're working on it.
Well, that's amazing, though, that you've been through all of these traumatic experiences and you're able to walk away a better person. A lot of people take a different path and kind of set themselves off on the path of self-destruction. So, how do you incorporate the lessons that you've learned, or what were your biggest takeaways that enable you to do the work that you do now?
So let's talk about that word free flowing for a minute, because I love that you. So the first part of that word, free, to me, freedom means choice. Okay. So everyone to me, has freedom of choice. You might not think that you do, but you do. And I think that once I was able to be aware that I am not, there was so many years where I didn't feel like I had freedom of choice, because I didn't even know what my choices were. But when I was able to make different decisions, choose different people to be in my life, people that were either already healthier or committed to a path of being healthier. When I was able to choose that, when I was able to make the choice to return to school, when I was able to make the choice to break the generational cycle of abuse and addiction with my own children, it was just a series of different choices. And that is what created a different reality for me. That was
And
it.
that's empowering yourself to take your power back,
Yep.
essentially knowing that we do have choice. A lot of the
Yep.
times as children, that choice is taken away from us and our autonomy stripped from us. So as
Yep.
adults, sometimes we don't realize that we do have the power to choose a different path to begin to heal and to grow and to move towards the
Yep.
life of our dreams. Um,
Yep.
what advice would you give to anybody who might be struggling as an adult with traumatic experiences of the past that they haven't dealt with? Is there can you advise them in some way to take a step towards their healing? I know that's very general, but
Yeah.
what do you have for the people out there listening that
So,
haven't given voice to their experiences as of yet and have been harboring it internally?
yeah, I think that the biggest part of the battle is the why. Like, why is learning your why. Why do you have the patterns? Why, you know, a lot of times we think drama follows us around, or, you know, you keep choosing, you know, the bad relations keep bad friends, or maybe toxic friendships, toxic relationships keep showing up in your life. You know, you're not able to, you don't really have an inspiration to do anything better with your life, or to move it in a more positive direction, or you feel like you're a victim and you just feel like you can't get over the anger. I think once you figure out the why of everything, like, why do I have these patterns? Why does this keep showing up in my life? Why? Because I remember I was sitting in therapy with my husband. My husband's always been the one to suggest therapy when we are going through a rough patch. And I do want to, like, here's just a little pro tip from anybody, from someone that's had a shitload of bad relationships. If your partner says that they will never go to therapy, run as fast as you fucking can, because that is just the biggest red flag. Because therapy has saved my life and my marriage. So I was sitting in therapy. We were talking about the fights that we had, and I think Michelle Obama talks about something similar in her book, that where she was sitting there, and you think you're going to therapy to try to, like, fix your husband, right? Like, oh, we're gonna show him. But that therapist, she was wonderful. She never blamed me for anything, right? She never blamed him for anything. She did her fucking job. And she just asked me the question, why do you think these fights keep happening? And I was like, I sat on that question for probably 3 weeks. And I realized that those fights kept happening because that is what I thought was normal. And that is what I was taught. And that was just what was modeled to me. And that we haven't fought like that since. Like, that one question, that why, you know, that is the advice that I would have. One, I have a few different things, is just to start to become more mindful and aware of your patterns, and ask yourself why anything unhealthy or toxic keeps showing up in your life, because these lessons will repeat themselves until you've learned them. Why? And then I love Gabor Mate, Gabormate. He is like the person that I follow for anything that has to do with trauma. He's written many books. He's been on many podcasts. He's been on he's all over YouTube. You don't have to buy the book if you don't want to spend money. Just Google him and watch some of his videos. Like, he is very, very, very knowledgeable about trauma, and he's helped me a lot. So that's what I would say. That's my advice.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people distract themselves becoming workaholics or sexaholics, or find themselves scrolling or numb themselves with some kind of substance. But it's important to really look inward and become introspective and create a greater level of awareness. I think that's the first step towards changing. Can
Sure.
you speak to what you're doing now with your life, with the retreat center, the new thing that you're launching? I don't want to say too much about it. Put the ball in your court when it comes to that.
Yes. And by the time this launches, this podcast will be out, because I haven't even launched it yet. I haven't told anybody about it, really.
Okay.
So I'm excited to be able to talk about it a little bit, because I know that this won't come out until after it's launched.
And I would love for you to connect how your journey relates to the work you're doing now as well, as you tell us about what you're up to.
Yeah. So when I sold my senior home care company, the reason that I wanted to start a retreat property is because this is just like the world of healing, and the world of holding space, and the world of just being able to connect a little bit back to who you really are underneath all of the labels that we give ourselves and that society gives us, and all of that. that is what that is one of the big reasons that I started the retreat property. And now to branch off of that, I am going to be starting an intentional travel community called Soul Seeker Travel Company. And this will be for those people who would like to deepen their relationships with themselves, build confidence, create a little more mindfulness in their lives, a little more intention in their lives, but also maybe they haven't been able to focus on themselves in this way because, like me, they had something in their youth or their early 20s, early 30s happening to them that took their attention away from their selves, their spirituality, their connection with themselves. Like for me, I was raising children. I wasn't able to really focus on it very much until they were a little bit older. But a lot of times people, it's the same with like their careers. Maybe they have focused on their career and they're like having a holy shit moment, like, who am I really? Or anything like that, really. So if you would, people that want to take those experiences and take them out of their daily routine, because I think a lot of times when we're able to get out of our daily routines, we're able to get a maybe more of a broader perspective, different perspective of our life. So I want to take us out of that daily routine, and not necessarily, I'm not really calling it a retreat because, I think a lot of times our healing happens also in the real world, in the connections we make with others, and also along with ourselves. But so we'll be going on trips to deepen the connection with ourselves and with others as well through the act of traveling. And our first trip is going to be to Italy, to Tuscany, where we'll be taking some time to stay with in a farmhouse in the hills of Tuscany, not far from Florence. Yeah. And they have it'll be olive harvest season. So we'll be able to assist a little bit with the olive harvest and to see how olive oil is made and that sort of thing. So there will be a lot of fun and just being able to pick ourselves up out of our daily routine to connect with ourselves a little bit deeper. So
and hopefully that'll be just the first of many exotic locations
yeah,
that people will
I've
travel
got
to
lots
and learn more about themselves
yeah.
and be able to broaden their perspectives. What is your vision then with the retreat center in Punta Gorda, Solstice, if you want to talk a little bit about that venture and
Yeah.
where you see that going?
So for that, one of the reasons that when I created the space, the intention for it was for other people to book it for their own retreats. Like we have retreat facilitators, retreat leaders. A lot of them are women's wellness retreats, but we've had like a dance retreat there. We actually had a woman host a retreat for widows. We've had many, different yoga retreats and things like that. I think we have somebody that just booked it for a Reiki retreat. And so all sorts of different things. And that was really my intention. And my intention is for it to remain the same. I have a wonderful property operations manager named Barbara, and she does right now kind of run the day-to-day operations on site, and I run pretty much everything that's off site. Although I do travel there a couple times a week too. Especially if we have a retreat checking in, I'm usually there to make sure everything, to welcome them and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of like right now that's our main focus, and that it will be the, remaining the same for that. So yeah, we've held a couple of our own retreats there. But that I've learned that retreats are a lot of work, and when I am on site, not that it's bad, that's not a bad thing, but when I'm on site as the property owner also, it's like, it's just too much for me. So I don't know how many we'll do. We've done some like day retreats and those were totally manageable. So the day retreats were manageable, but like the overnight ones were a lot for me. And I'm learning my own boundaries for that. So yeah.
We might have to do a day retreat together. And I've cooked at your space. It's awesome. It's beautiful. Anybody
Yeah.
who's out there listening, who's a practitioner or a yoga guide or teacher, definitely check out Solstice in Punta Gorda. Great space. So as
Thanks.
an entrepreneur and a businesswoman who's managing many projects, how do you manage your own stress then on a daily basis to ensure that your own cup is full enough so that you can show up in the world and have this positive impact on the people that you come into contact with?
Yeah. So that's something I think we're all just working on, right? Like that that is a practice. I don't have a good answer for that other than I have to really pay attention to my energy levels and where my mind is. One thing that I will say is a non-negotiable for me is to have a morning routine. And I have been deep diving recently into how mindfulness might look different to a man versus a woman. A lot of spiritual leaders can you think of, like, I can think of on one hand women spiritual leaders, influential in, that we've seen in the media and stuff, spiritual leaders. And so something that I've been thinking a lot about lately is we are basing our expectations for our spirituality and our spiritual needs off of what men have told us the options that men have showed us, right? Dalai Lama, Buddha, Jesus, who else? They're all men, right? Gandhi,
Yep.
MLK, all of these people are men and they're telling us, how to be spiritual. But our lives are fucking different than men. And what I am learning and I'm loving so much is that I can find spirituality in waking up and making myself coffee and sitting down with it and petting my dogs. I can be very present in that moment. And that being that is almost like a ceremonial thing for me every morning now. And I realize that I don't have to put pressure on myself to sit in meditation for 20 minutes because I've got these fucking dogs running around me. Like I'm going to be distracted. And I have like a temporary roommate and my daughter's living with me now. So like my husband's moving down eventually. Long story. We've lived apart for a couple years only because of the solstice and me starting it, but he's moving down soon. But anyway, there's a lot of activity in my home and there always has been. And for most women, if you're a mom or if you have pets or even if you have a spouse or a partner, we have like these things are going to be distracting us, right? So I've been thinking a lot about that and how like our spiritual practices and our routines and our basically the things that we do every day look a lot different from a man's usually. So does that mean that we can't be spiritual beings? Does it mean that we can't be a spiritual being if we don't, practice, have an hour-long asana practice every morning? No, I can do 3 yoga poses and, being surrounded by my dogs and still feel like I've dipped back, connected to myself in that moment, right? So that is something that I've sort of started doing now is like taking little moments in the morning and little moments throughout the day to reconnect with my breath, to reconnect with myself and all of that. That was I went on a tangent there, but
No, that's what this is all about, and I love it. But to that point, it's
there might
like
be some misplaced
spirit.
anger about that too. I was like, why has it all been patriarchal spirituality?
That's awesome. Spirituality, though, can mean different things to different people. I like to
Yes,
consider
for sure.
myself a spiritual person, although that word has become so icky and taboo. I've been on this path for over 20 years, probably much like yourself. having
Yeah.
come from this dysfunctional background, also then became a bartender, got an advanced degree in forensic psychology, did all the things that I thought that I should do.
Yeah.
I was on this healing path with just embracing all sorts of different modalities, still on the healing path.
Yeah.
Eventually decided to follow my heart and pursue what was really important to me with intention, created this business, Free Flowing Health, that has ever evolved and is still adapting, just like human beings do. But just I want to get across to anybody listening that like you said, you don't have to do a rigid practice that's full of rules and be 100% consistent with it a certain way. It can look different every day. It can be as simple as implementing kindness, speaking to yourself nicely. It can be taking a walk outside, playing in the garden, right? It's different for
Yes.
everybody. And I definitely want to move towards like this idea that spiritual is hokey pokey or has to look a certain way, or you have to wear like a tin hat on your head in order to be spiritual, or you're
Yeah.
not spiritual enough and I'm more spiritual than you because I got this certification. So, since that's what your podcast is kind of about and
Yeah.
you're so grounded in this and trying to bring some lightheartedness, even though, we may believe in some of these things, can you speak to that a little bit about your podcast, what you hope to accomplish with the topics that you cover and the guests that you interview, and just, your idea of what spirituality is?
Yeah. So, my podcast is called You're So Fucking Enlightened. It's sort of like a spoofy name because like the enlightenment is another one of those words that can make us feel a little bit icky. But also like I don't know that we have another vocabulary for it right now. So like,
Yeah.
and with spirituality, like I don't know what other, to me, it's just fucking paying attention. Like it is
Yeah,
fucking paying attention.
exactly.
And that that's what it is. And that's I don't I it's being in the present moment. We can't do that all the time. We don't live in a society where we can be in a present moment all the time. We have to think about our future sometimes. We have to sort of like if we have a family, you might have to plan your dinners and plan your meals and think of, you have a job, you're a chef, so you have to plan these things out. We can't live in the present moment all the time. But like just to like for me, spirituality is the art and practice of paying attention. Science, art, all of it is just paying attention and asking questions and being curious and not and having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. Like that to me is spirituality. And you don't have to wear mala beads. You don't have to sit on top of a mountain meditating. You don't have to go through yoga teacher training. You don't have to smell like patchouli, although I do like patchouli, and all of these things I'm not saying you shouldn't do. I think it's freaking awesome if you can, but like you don't
You don't
have to.
need a
It's just
guru. You don't need a guru. You don't need to give your power away to someone or something outside of
right,
yourself. You can find
right.
it within.
Right. And so the podcast sort of talks about a lot of different topics about spirituality, and a lot of it's more like 101. Like you want to start paying more attention, but you don't know how. You want to start diving into healing your trauma, but you don't know how. Our first season, we had a ton of guests on where we had a tarot card reader. We had a lady that does ayahuasca retreats in Colombia. We had my yoga teacher came on, and my friend Jeannie Baker, who is my temporary roommate because she's getting ready to move to Italy. She was on, but because she's my temporary roommate for our season 2, she is joining me on the podcast where we're not focusing on guests right now. We're doing more like our podcast that we're actually going to be recording today is going to be called What is Joy and How Can I Get More of That? Because we're talking about the difference between just being happy and having actual joy in your life, because those two things are different and we don't think they are, but they are. And so, it's just kind of like if you're curious about the healing world or anything that has to do with spirituality, it's just a good place to start. When she moves, we're free flowing too. So I don't know where it will go in the future. We might bring more guests on. I'd love to have you on mine too. But right now we're not having guests on just for this season. So yeah.
And there's endless options and possibilities. I like to say whether
Yeah.
it's numerology or astrology or tarot
Yep.
or ayahuasca, these are
So many.
all tools
Yep.
or a process to get to where you're going as part of your natural evolutionary
Yes.
process as a spiritual being inhabiting a meat suit or a physical body. It's like
Yep.
not everything is going to resonate with every person, and that's the beauty of just
Yep.
being here with so many options and so many choices, that something can serve as a psychic trigger or just, set us down this rabbit hole of self-discovery, which is a positive thing. And something might work for a period of time, and then it may, just like a relationship, serve its purpose, but then it's time to let go and move on to the next thing. And then you might be like me, where I'm taking a break from all of these spiritual things, including yoga, these seemingly spiritual things, to find myself in a way that I haven't for such a long time, just redefining, restructuring, reassessing what it is I want in my life,
Yeah.
and what is still serving a purpose, or what am I ready to
Yeah.
let go of so I can move into the next stage.
Right. And that's the yoga. Even though it's not yoga, that's the yoga. You're not
Exactly.
practicing asana, but you're practicing paying attention. And that to me is the yoga. So yeah.
Yeah. So I guess last question that I like to ask all my guests, which you sort of kind of answered a little bit earlier on in the
Yeah.
conversation, is when you hear free flowing health, what does that
Yeah.
mean to you in a nutshell?
Yeah. Absolutely. So just to go back to free is choice. So free to me means choice and flowing means moving. So you have the choice to move through anything in your health that you feel is right for you. And that's what you're doing now. And I love that. Like it's just taking the time to assess what you need and what your body's feeling. Maybe you started to feel different after eating a certain food. So you're going to free flow through a different dietary plan or whatever. Or maybe you have been practicing CrossFit and you are starting to get a lot of injuries and you're like, you know what, maybe my body is starting to tell me I'm moving too fast through this workout. Maybe I need to start going slower through some weightlifting and paying more attention and being more mindful about it. And it's just like making different choices based on the the your what you've paid attention to.
And I
And
I
I
love
love that.
love that,
Yeah.
and I feel like as we get older, we're similar in age, that it almost becomes easier to do that. Like, you live a life at some point that, again, that
Yeah.
you've been conditioned to believe, like, this is the path I, quote unquote, should take. But
Yeah.
as I age and with the experiences I've had, and as an entrepreneur, I think it's so important to begin to listen to that subtle voice, and your body and your spirit is always trying to communicate if we just shut the
Oh,
fuck up and,
yeah.
like, listen to
Yeah.
it.
Always. Yeah, it's always talking to us and it's always telling us something. And that's sort of why, the act of slowing down and paying attention to it. If you can't slow down and pay attention to it, then you'll never hear it and you'll keep going. So, yeah.
Right. So hopefully everybody finds what's good for them. And thank you so much for
Sure.
sharing your presence, sharing space and telling
Yeah.
your story. If people want to connect with you, if they want to join you at your retreat center, if they want to book a retreat, if they want to just connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah. Thank you. So, first of all, thank you for having me on. I've loved this talk. I love connecting with you. We don't talk enough. And I feel like every time I talk to you, I'm like, why don't I talk to her more?
I know. We
We're-
have to
we're-
connect in St. Pete's. St. Pete's. I mean St. Pete.
That's right. That's right. Um, so I have not I on Instagram right now. You can find me at Robbin Robbin, two B's and my first name, Webb, two B's and my last name. It's Robbin_Webb on Instagram. Facebook, it's Robbin Webb on Facebook. I have not really started any social media because as of this podcast being recorded, I have not officially launched my business yet. So at some point, you'll be able to find me at Soul Seeker Travel Company on something. But if you want to look, so, but if you are interested in connecting with Solstice, our website is solsticepg.com. That's SOLSTICE. PG is in Punta Gorda.com. And you can find out all about our place there. We're also on Instagram and Facebook, Solstice Punta Gorda. So, yep.
Fuck yeah. So everybody needs to check it out. And yeah, we definitely need to hang out whenever we can, whenever I'm
Yeah,
in
for
St.
sure.
Pete's, or I'm still going to
Let me
call it
know the
St.
next time you're
Pete's.
coming up and we'll do something. We'll go eat at
Definitely.
one of
And
those many amazing vegan restaurants we have here. There's so many.
I know you guys have a lot of options. I definitely hope to book something at your retreat center, even if I just start off with a day retreat. So we'll see how
Yeah,
that plays out. Like you, I have a
sure.
lot of different projects and things happening, but it's on my heart. And I'm sure we're going to have some future discussions, and I look forward to that as well. And I can't thank you enough for
Yeah.
just showing up today, real and authentic, because
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to find that nowadays. So thank you
I
again.
agree. I love it. Thank you. Unfiltered, baby.
Fuck yeah. Any
All
last
right.
words?
Just my advice to everyone is take a little bit of time to listen to listen. That's all I'll say. Take a little bit of time to listen. Somebody said to me that I don't remember when it was, and I don't even remember, it could have been a Christian church, but it doesn't matter because it's pretty broad. The act of prayer is talking to God, and the act of meditation is listening. And whether
Listening.
you attach
Yes.
that to whether you attach that to God or source or universe or whatever, whatever that higher power is to you, that's the art of meditation is listening. So meditation doesn't have to mean you sit in lotus pose for 30 minutes every day, but just taking 5 minutes, 2 minutes to just close your eyes and breathe. You'll hear something. You'll start to hear something. So
That's right. So get your head out of your ass and listen. Listen to the higher calling, everyone. We love
yeah.
you. Till next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Free Flowing Health podcast. Your support means the world to us. Help us grow by leaving a positive rating and review. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share this podcast. If you'd like to stay connected, you can find me on social media at Free Flowing Health, or visit my website directly, freeflowinghealth.com. Wishing you a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life. Till the next time.
This podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, or professional advice. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional or medical advice. Views and opinions expressed by the guest are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the view of the host or the Free Flowing Health team.